Hello everyone, Dwayne Huff, founder and creator of Band Leadership Seminars, and I wanted to come to you real quick and share something that I believe on some level I've known for years, but really have not connected the dots to serve you guys in the space that you're in. And recently I was having a conversation with someone who asked me about the reason why what they call emotional intelligence is so important to success. You know, we've heard throughout our lives as we're coming up in school that IQ is important, and people want to test the IQ to see how smart people are. But here's the reality of the situation. There's something known as emotional intelligence or EQ, and that's simply, there's 4 quadrants to that, and it comes from a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and it basically says this, that there's 4 quadrants. There's our self-awareness, what we're aware of, and then there's social awareness, what we're aware of out in society. There's how we govern ourselves and how we manage our relationships. And I know that's really technical, but here's how it applies to you as a band director or as a student leader. And here's the basic thing. Whenever we're trying to get the cooperation of the people that are in the band program, and we're trying to influence them or persuade them or get them to do what we need them to do, it takes a high deal of emotional intelligence, or if you will, people skills, for lack of a better term, to get that to happen. And here's why. And you know, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a neurosurgeon, I don't know major things, but I spent some time in the presence of a neuroscientist who was sharing some of the latest data, and he showed us how the brain function on a very basic level, and I was excited about that because that's kind of how I see things, on a very basic level, right? But he simply said this: when we're trying to influence people or connect with people or understand people or persuade people, we need to understand how the brain works. And it basically this, he held up his hand and he said there's 3 parts of the brain. There's a reptilian brain, there's a limbic system, and then there's the cerebral cortex. And he said this part of the brain right here is called the reptilian brain, and it's responsible for that fight or flight mechanism. And it simply means that when something happens, our body goes into fight or flight, especially if we're threatened or in danger, and chemicals are released to make us decide which direction we're going. So it's a conditioned response sort of thing. He said, he folded his thumb over and he said, think about this part as the emotional center of the brain. This is where all of the emotional connections and feelings and gut checks all come from. And he says, you know, as we're growing up, our brain develops slowly this way, and so that core of the fight or flight or the emotional center develop first. That's why young children connect with adults based on if they like them or not, because their BS radar is just absolutely a mile long. And teenagers, listen to me real quick. This is not a judgment, and I'm not picking on you, but you're operating from this part of your brain. This part is still developing, and it's developed, but this is what you know. This is where you're operating from, and if you'll notice, many times you start to feel very emotional, and you don't even know why. You respond to things emotionally, you make decisions emotionally, and that's not a judgment on you. It's just the way your brain's wired. And so you have to understand that when you're trying to connect with students or your peers, you have to understand what makes them tick emotionally, and you do that by spending time with them and getting to know them on a personal level. Understand what they like, understand what they don't like, understand what their fears are, understand what they're looking for from their band experience, or maybe what they want out of life. And when you begin to understand what's emotional to them and you resonate that and connect with that, pretty soon you find that people begin to know you, begin to like you, and begin to trust you. And then and only then will they allow you to influence them. But here's the third part of that, and the third part of the brain. Once people know you, like you, and trust you, they begin to, in their cerebral cortex, they begin to make connections and distinctions about how they're going to respond to those emotions. They make sense of it, they justify it, and they make logical sense out of what they feel emotionally. And that's the way most human beings operate, is from first that emotional center that tells them how they're going to respond or how they're going to proceed, and then they justify it logically. So if you can connect with people on an emotional level, really understand who they are as individuals, and speak their language, you help them to justify the actions they take. And when you do that, they will begin to follow you. Now, just a little warning here, and I'll finish this out. As your brain develops, the last thing to develop is the prefrontal cortex. Now, I'm only telling you this as teenagers, and as band directors are working with teenagers for this one reason. Physically speaking, scientifically, biologically speaking, the prefrontal cortex of your brain does not fully develop until you're 23 or 24, 25 years old. That was research and science that came out in 1996, it was a lot later than that, I'm sorry, 2005 or something like that, my apologies. But it simply said that prefrontal cortex does not fully develop until that age, and that prefrontal cortex, you can look this up, is basically the place in the brain where we make decisions, where we understand what the long-term consequences of those decisions will be. And I just want to say this, is that don't look at that as a judgment, don't look at that as anything but understanding that that's the reason we need adults in our lives. And I would have argued that to no end if I was sitting where you are right now. But the fact of the matter is that they've gone before us. They see further than us. And that's why when your band director is asking you to do a certain thing or make a certain decision that's in your benefit, we really need to submit to that and go in that direction. And then the adults in our lives, when they're trying to do good things for us, really submit to that, because they're just looking out for our best interests and the things that our prefrontal cortex will not allow us to decide yet. So bottom line here is reach to people emotionally, connect with them on an emotional level, and it will blow your mind how influential you can be with them, because they know you, they like you, and they trust you, and they begin to make logical sense of the direction you are going. So I hope this served. Until we talk next time, have a brilliant day, and we'll talk to you soon.